Keep your fucking hands up!
No, boss.
Corner's vacant, man! Vacant! Easy,
Open. Hey, is this your corner?
It's vacant, man!
Is this your fucking...
You son of a bitch, I'm gonna kill you right now! Huh? You wanna die, huh?
순식거리야 이거 남의 나라에서.
And who are you, huh, asshole? You wanna die too, huh, motherfucker? Come on, let's go, it's crunch time. What the hell are you doing?
Oh, you just found a baby shark in one of these squid.
Is shark on the menu?
No, chef.
So don't mess with it.
Yes, chef.
Hey,
How many covers we got tonight?
90.
Shit, okay.
And the greens are in. What card do we put it on?
Yes.
Still haven't paid the wine guy either.
Shit.
Don't worry, I'll talk to him. Okay? Be nice. Got this.
Last thing you want is for your girl to be next to you when you find out you fucking lost.
You must be feeling good since you got that judge in your pocket, huh?
Oh, yeah, you think they rigged this shit for me? Oh, dude, that's hilarious. I own the hottest restaurant in downtown. They don't have to rig shit. Besides, you're the one who's getting special treatment, not me.
Fuck you mean?
Come on, Brandon. They can't put on this whole show without a blackface in the competition.
Hi, my name is Ralph Klisiewicz. On Creativity, episode number 6. I'm here with my friend Mickley O'Sullivan.
Hi. What's up? My name is Mickley O'Sullivan. I'm an actor here in Chicago.
Okay, Mickley, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
I have gone by a variety of names. I think the IRS thinks that I have multiple aliases. Mickey, Mike, Sully, Shithead. It goes on. Mihal. My father wanted to call me Mihal. My father's an Irish immigrant. Came over when he was 18 with his best friend. And my brother, his name was Donica, and I could see him being teased the way that his name was different than a lot of the other American students. And I didn't want that, so I went by Mike. And every step along the way, there was something that happened that made me go, that doesn't feel like me. And so I would switch from Mickey to Mike to Mikey to Mick. And then when I went to college, I just decided to, stake my claim and go by what my family has always called me, which is Mickey.
I can relate to your story because when I came here to the United States as a Polish immigrant, a lot of American kids had a really hard time with Rafał, which is my Polish last name, because a lot of Americans cannot do the rolling R, Rafał. Sure. So they were just rough, and nobody can pronounce it, so I just went with a translation, which is Ralph. So I'm kind of going with that. But yes, and then you sort of, when you take on a translation of a name, then you almost take on a different identity, which I can speak to how that sort of shaped my creative perspective, being an outsider. You always, as an immigrant, you always have a different perspective. You're seeing the culture sort of from the outside.
So do you find yourself being an outsider alone more often? Is that the way that you felt in the world, like more alone? I did, yes, because I'll tell you a little story. I left Poland when I was 10 years old. Then my family immigrated to Italy, where there was this transitional camp for refugees escaping communism. So we got all the paperwork there, and then 2 years later we came to the United States. But the difference was, in Italy we had this Polish cohort. So we lived as a one big cohort together, and that cohort sort of gave you safety. So there were a lot of Polish kids, Polish immigrants together. We lived together. When I came to the United States, there the kids could not pronounce my name. Well, some of them could. If they were Mexican, they spoke Spanish, they can do the R, rolling R. Yes. But the ones couldn't. So I just went with the sort of the easiest path. So I put this mask on. I am now the American Ralph. Yes.
And that mask in itself, I think when speaking of masks, we can probably then segue to acting. Acting, from Greek perspective, is putting a mask on, correct?
Yes, and we all do. Everybody's an actor every single day. You're an actor when you went to Dollop Coffee earlier and you need to get your coffee and you're in a rush, you're wearing a different mask. You have all the time in the world, you're wearing a different mask. And it's not this, I think some people think that acting is some sort of manipulative thing. The amount of times I call them muggles, the people who are like normal, everyday people who work 9 to 5. Muggles will be like, oh, isn't it kind of manipulative to be an actor? Like, I don't know if you're being real with me or not. And, I kind of resent that because I don't think that it is that. I think that everybody is acting all of the time, and I don't think it's for some nefarious purpose.
It's just how we exist within one another, right? Within society, we play different roles to different people. You might be a dad to some people, even if you are not a birth father, you act as a father, you are paternal to somebody. While at the same point, they might look at you like a brother. And those are relationships. So that's another thing that we look at when we're acting is like, what's the relationship on paper, the actual relationship, and then how do we treat one another?
Okay, so let me ask you something specific about acting, because acting is a mysterious type of art. When I talk to a painter, most people understand that in order to paint, you have to learn how to potentially draw some figures, how to mix colors. If you want to be a musician, you have to potentially learn some instruments or sing. But acting, you might have a page with script. How do we bring it to life?
Yeah, there's a famous jazz quote, to play what's not there. And that means that there are notes on the paper, and then there's everything else. If all you had to do was say the lines, well, anybody could do that, really. All you have to do is work on your elocution skills. But there's so much more to it. There's looking across on the other person and looking and noticing that they are feeling tentative. And that might change the way that you say a thing to them or do a thing, depending on what you need from them or why you're sharing space with them. So there's all of these other things, and it is mysterious. I'll be the first person to tell you that I have no idea what I'm doing. It's all a process of looking at a new problem and trying to figure out how to solve the problems that are on that page. Figure out what the situation is, what the circumstances are. And then we can go back and like, well, where did we get the method as we know it? And it comes from artists or theater artists in Russia, primarily, who have decided, an engineer decided, Stanislavski, with an engineering background, I believe, has figured out that like, if I can figure out an exercise or a process for people to replicate what happened to them the night before, well, then we can provide something to an audience that is ongoing and living, rather than a stale, rehearsed thing that is going to be the same thing every night.
I've taken, I think, enough of acting classes to understand it. I never developed into a real actor, but I took about 1.5 years of acting, which I think taught me how to be on the other side of the camera to direct. So at least I understand your language. And I do understand that when you do have a page with script, with the words, like, for example, something as simple as hello. Or if I'm working, if I'm a director and you are an actor, my job is for us, you and I, to sit down and to think, if this character says hello, what does he mean by that? Does he mean to be sarcastic? Is he being flirtatious? Is he being indifferent to the other character, and maybe potentially the line is a throwaway? How does it connect to the lines that he said before, and how does it connect to the subsequent lines, and potentially lead up to either an argument or maybe a love situation, and so on and so on. So I think the job of both the director in this situation and actor is to really deep dive and see what's underneath the text. Would you agree?
No. Mainly because I don't know that and it's going to depend. Are we working in theater? Are we working in film? Are we working in commercial? Are we where are we doing a solo performance? How manufactured is it? How rehearsed is it? Do we want it to be? Because I think the words matter, sure. But there's also so much underneath those words that is important to be flexible with. Making decisions about how a line is said, night over night over night, leads to, in my opinion, stale performances and rigidity. Okay. There needs to be some sort of life that is breathed into it on a nightly basis, so that it's me noticing your hands are folded, do you feel restrained? And how does that now affect how I say hello?
Got it.
And if the next night you come in and you're thinking so much about, my hands need to be here because Ralph told me my hands are here, and I need to say hello because Ralph told me to say hello here, then you're not really present with me. And what the audience is seeing is something that's been formed 2 weeks ago, and not something that's alive and happening in front of them. I think what's really exciting is for us to not know what's coming next, not only for the audience, but also for the actor.
So what you're saying is that you might have like a starting point. Let's say, let's stick to this hello, right?
Yes.
So we might say that we want to sort of have a scene where you are flirting with this person, or you want to lead up to flirt, and see where it goes from there, right?
Yeah, and so what I would say is like, what are the circumstances?
Got it.
So like, what time is it?
Yep.
Where are we at? Who are you?
Let's focus on film, because I understand we're not going to talk about commercial type of work, theater. You're primarily a on-camera type of actor, right? So let's sort of focus on that and stick with this hello, right? and wherever that leads. I think my job as a filmmaker to help you is to then, the way I approach it, I would sit down with you and rehearse, even before rehearse, have a discussion.
Yes.
What do these characters are trying to achieve, right? What's the context in a bigger story? Where are they psychologically? My background is psychology, so I always think of psychological levers. So if this character wants to flirt by saying hello, does he see that there's a leverage that he has with this, maybe the character he's going to flirt with, or what are his desires? What are his limitations? Maybe he's shy, and this is the first time he says hello to a girl, right? And maybe it takes quite a bit of courage for him to say that, and so on and so on. So I think, without getting specific, I think a job of director and the relationship between director and actor is to explore the bigger context, right? And then see where the words take us. Would you agree?
Yes and no.
Okay, continue on. I would like your explanation.
I think, right, like the way that I view the director-actor relationship, especially in film, is that the director has the overarching job of telling the entire story. Also has to communicate with scheduling, has to communicate with wardrobe, because all of those elements tell a story. And the director is not just, and I think this is sometimes it depends on who the director is not solely focused on the acting coach of it. The actor, I think, is hired to make those decisions, so that they can go, we're all looking at the same blueprint.
Yes.
That blueprint will make me go, oh, that's interesting, this, and this. I think sometimes too much discussion on micro moments of it leads to a very on-time, safe schedule.
Right, but let me ask you this. Do you then believe in rehearsals? Or do you
I do, yes, but not in order to manufacture a moment.
Got it.
So that we all have the same understanding of what the circumstances are. So you might go, Mick, the way that you're saying hello here implies that you're familiar with this person. But I want to give you this, that the circumstances say that you've never met this person before in your life, and they're a threat to you. And I might go, oh, I didn't intuit that from the text.
Got it.
And your job is to understand that story, in my opinion. The director's job is to understand that story, the overarching story, so well that they can go, this part doesn't tell the story that's on the page. The way that you're doing this doesn't tell this specific story. How do we find a way to alter that choice so that this is true? So you might go, yes, this person's a threat to you. Based on this thing that happened earlier in the script. And I go, oh, that makes more sense. Or I might go, yes, but here, the writer has given us this. How do we manage the fact that earlier I saw her at a coffee shop? And it's on page 2.
Sometimes I get a little too nitpicky on moments, and I know I'm guilty of it. But I agree with you, too, that I've worked as a DP with some other directors and so on, where they, for example, will have the actor say certain lines. I just tell them, just take this line a little bit more angrier, or maybe play this a little bit with kind of a funny angle, and so on and so on. And then in post-production, choose what they want to do.
Which I think is a really important aspect, right? Like, there are times where the actor is working on a scene, and we have a very specific shot that we need. And I can't be objective while I'm saying the line, and also I can't be thinking about what the camera is seeing and also committed to you doing this thing as my scene partner. So I need then you, the director, to go, Mickey, the way that you're saying that sounds like this story, but the story that we need to tell is this. So can you say this angrier so that in the edit, I can have this line to justify her reaction?
Yeah. There's a lot of acting, even if you're not saying anything. I agree with you. Let's go back to the high.
Yes.
The word high on the page. Let's say if you want to meet this girl and you want to bring her coffee, and you see her as a threat to you're self-conscious, and she potentially is a threat because you have to say hello to her and you don't know her. The way you're going to work with a coffee is going to be different if you're some kind of a player.
Like, if you were interested in dating that person, is that what you're getting at?
Exactly. But if you were some very, very confident player and you've done this hundreds of times and it's just a matter of another hello, you're going to carry the coffee a little bit differently.
That's right.
So those are the circumstances.
It's the
this character
exactly.
of walking with the coffee. It's the things that people don't realize. A good directing actor relationship will bring those things on a screen of which people don't realize, but they feel it. They don't see it, but they feel it. I watch movies with my wife all the time, and I find some interesting choices, directing choices or actors' choices. And I would ask her, like, did you notice how, for example, the way he kind of scratched his head before he said this line or something like this? They never catch it, but they feel it.
You would notice it more if it weren't there.
Exactly.
So like what I think the difference is when I coach actors as well is that what I find the way that we present most stories in film, I do a thing, I don't do a thing. I say a thing or I don't say a thing that you're expecting me to or not expecting me to. And it changes the way that you are. So I might say hello to you and you might go,
there you go.
And what we would go is we would cut on the action of you holding your hands.
Yes, because your hello maybe became some kind of a threat. Now I have to prepare my line because you say hello, I have to say hello back to you. So you're right, there's a humanity to it. And that's what we talk about. The words bring the actions alive to a screen.
Yes, and so if I can compare it to a sport, it's tennis. And you can plot out tennis, you can plot out any sort of live sport.
Yes.
But I can't tell Serena Williams and Venus to play the same match every time.
Exactly.
I could tell Serena, and Serena probably already knows that, like, hey, if you bring Venus to the net, you're gonna win every time. Because Venus isn't as good at the net. And so what I would say is, like, the rehearsal is practice. It's going like, there are all of these different ways to play it. The most accurate way is this type of thing, but now be free within that. So there's the behavior plus dialogue. And these are the building blocks in which we use to tell a story or that we use to edit a conversation or some dialogue. And I'm interested in when actors do a thing rather than always how they say a thing. Like, have you seen One Battle After Another?
Yes.
Anybody could raise their hands to the police. It wasn't that. It was this and this dance that he does at the end. And that's a specific way that he came
Benicio
up with.
del Toro, yes.
Benicio del Toro. He came up with in the moment there.
So you're saying that acting is heavily reliant on what the other actors do. And potentially, sometimes you're acting not necessarily with, you could be acting with objects too.
That's
Let's say
right,
like washing dishes.
Yes, 100%.
There could be choices with how you approach dishes.
That's
right. And
you're going to approach your grandmother's china differently than you're going to approach the china at an Airbnb that overcharged you, right?
And all those choices, accumulation of choices, bring things to life again. And it's, once again, the art that nobody sees, right? And a lot of times, let's talk about this, creativity. I talk with other guests about creativity and mistakes. In other words, something happens on the set that you have no control, a mistake or so on. And sometimes that choice is better than your original plan.
Yes, often.
Right?
So creativity, two things. There's a divergent process in which all ideas are good ideas. They have to be tried. If you don't try them, they get stuck and they block good ideas.
Yes.
And then there's convergent. And then the convergent process, it is when we're getting closer to being on production and going like, yeah, you coming in with a clown nose is a really funny choice, but it doesn't fit within a drama taking place in 1930. Like, that doesn't make sense. And so, like, the profitization or the monetization of creativity is about selecting for the specific project that you're working on. We can find 1.5 million ways to say hello. But likely there's 15
that are appropriate for the situation, yes.
And then my job is to go, cool, know that all 15 of those are good. And in the moment, based on what's happening, what's not happening, my expectations of what should happen, I have any of those. And it keeps me free to make fun choices or to make mistakes. And then the other part is the editor in film. I can go like this, like we can use this as an example.
Sure.
I can go, and you can use that for any reaction that you want. Reality TV is a wild thing, right? Because the editor and producer can tell whatever story they want based on reactions. They don't have to be chronological.
No.
So the director could go, I really just need you to make
exactly
that
you
face.
scared, because we'll use it for something else.
Yes.
In a conversation, yes.
And so there's a trust that has to happen with the director.
Well, you know that when you make a film, first of all, it's written 3 times. Once you write it as a script, as you film it, that's a collaborative process with directors, DPs, lighting, audio, and actors. And then hopefully you have enough footage that you can rewrite it again in the edit process. And I've done that too. I've done that too, where I've had a script and I'm like, this scene just looks flat and silly. I'm gonna cut it up, I'm gonna chop it up, and then just make put music over it and make it almost like a flashback or something. I've done it before.
That's such an interesting part about acting as well, is if you do theater, more often than not, we're doing plays that have already been produced. I've been lucky enough to do a lot of plays that are first things or being workshopped. And that's why I love working in film. It's like, this is the first time. Mm-hmm. These choices are ours, and we get to tell this story our way for the first time. But there is something interesting or to be said about the script isn't done in film until the audience is watching it.
Yeah.
And so you might get on set and go, this works perfectly in my imagination, but in reality, there's no way for him to cross that amount of space and to not see this, that, or the other in order to say that line. So how do we make it work given the location, given the wardrobe, sometimes given the constraints?
Yeah.
Creativity is all built on constraints.
Mm-hmm. You have to have constraints.
Yes, and then you have to be flexible enough
because
to alter it.
If you have, let's say, like a Nolan's budget of $250 million, you can do everything. But that in itself is limited, because if we can do everything, we want to build a ship, we have a ship come to the coast, we have all the 50 characters on there, they're going to fight or whatever, and we have planes flying over them, sure, we can get those too. But when you're constrained, then okay, we want to show a scared soldier. We can't have a ship, we can't have a plane. We just put him, maybe just show his eyes, and maybe he's in a box and people outside are just shaking it, right? And then you just see only the shaking, he's enclosed, and that's all you see. And maybe since we can't get a plane, we just do the audio of the planes flying over him and then show his fear, right? So now you're constrained and your choices are much more limited. And creative choices come out of that.
So what is acting? It's pretending.
Mm-hmm.
Acting is a game of pretend that we have chosen to make into a multi-billion-dollar industry. And I think that that is an important element, is that not that it becomes fun in child's play, but that there is something very important to creativity that is without consequence.
So creativity, in essence, is mistakes that then we reorganize into performance.
That's right. It's an additive art.
So speaking of mistake, let me tell you a story when I was shooting The Artifact, a short film. It was one of those films where we have a character going from one environment in this loft where he is in real world supposedly, and then into this apartment where he sort of exists as a ghost. So we're shooting the apartment, and you shoot out of sequence, so you kind of go shoot everything that you can in the apartment. And everything went well. Next morning I wake up and the main actor texts me, I am so sorry, I forgot on the last scene, I forgot to change the shirt I'm supposed to be in the last scene. And I'm going, what are we gonna do? We can't refilm this and everything. So basically, in the loft part, we came up with this idea where when he gets shot in the head, bleeds all over his shirt, and he decides to rip it apart. Then we cut to the other actor that's speaking to him, and then we cut back to him, and now he's got the other shirt, which then here appears in the apartment. So we rewrote the story in a certain way. And it made more sense. That rewrite, because of the mistake, was much better than the original story. Do you have anything that you can share?
Okay, so this is a story that I enjoy quite a bit. My biggest mistake has led to me having the career that I have. I was called in for Chicago PD to do a 2-line role. Essentially, the role is like, it wasn't me, it was him. And I come in, and I was nervous, so I did it very quick. And the guy was like, yeah, you don't really strike me as a guy that rats out somebody that fast. Why don't you take these 5 pages, go out there, read for this other role of the guy that you were ratting out? And so I was like, great. And I went out in the hallway, and I'm looking at this material. I asked another actor who had the same request to do the same thing. And I went back in there, and I get to page 4, and I forgot to flip the page. And at that point, I'm too far gone to flip the page. The guy's like, give me his name. And I forgot the guy's name that I was supposed to rat out. And so I'm just sitting there going, and then it came to me, and I said the name, and they say cut, and all I'm thinking is like, you fucking idiot, you blew that. And the director goes, I just loved how you really didn't want to give the guy away. And so I do that, and then I book this role, and that role leads to 2 episodes, which gives me enough money to be able to spend some more time auditioning without having to get that 9 to 5 that would have at that time really just kind of narrowed my choices. And then, worked on Chicago PD now as 3 different characters over the course of 8 seasons, going from, two episode co-star to another episode co-star to a 3-season guest star. That's all because of one simple mistake, which was I couldn't remember the other character's name that I was supposed to rat out.
Mickey, what is good acting?
It's accurate. It is making choices that are specific to the character that the situation that the writer has presented. It's accurate to what's happening in front of them or what's happening in their imagination. And it's concise, meaning a lot of times you'll get a note as an actor, you're doing too much. And what I think that note really means is we get it. So like if you lift your eyebrows because you're shocked, you also don't have to do this. It tells the story. And what we tend to do is we don't believe, we are scared sometimes as artists that the story that we just participated in isn't told. So we add to it. Oh, I got to do this. And then I also have to raise my voice. And then I also have to do all of these other things. When likely, you only need one gesture to tell a specific story. You're stressed, you don't need to do this. And then.
So overacting is basically not having trust in your authenticity.
And you don't have trust in the story or the director or, that the lighting is going to do a part of that, or maybe the music after. Mm-hmm. You have to trust that you are one part of this giant thing, and that, sometimes just thinking for a little while is super helpful in the edit so that we have a place to score.
What are your opinions on the artificial intelligence entering the world of film? Where do you see it being useful, and where do you see as
Here's my thing is, I don't know about you, I've worked with AI a bit, and it's a communication problem, which is the same problem that we have with one another. But communication is a perishable skill. And so the more that we invest in AI and communicating with a computer in order to get what we want, the less we're going to communicate with one another. And if we depend solely on something that is computer generated or computer run, and not a more reliable, I do think, source, maybe slower, maybe more expensive, but a more reliable, longer history source, we're letting the human-to-human communication perish. And we're losing jobs. And I would argue right now in a economy that, you buy 2 loaves of bread and a jar of olives that cost you $25. That's a really important thing. So my first and foremost reaction to AI in the film space is I show up on film because I like people. I like to tell stories with other people. I fear that I'll show up on a film, we'll shoot it all in a day, the whole thing in a day. I won't make the money that I need to make in order to do this for a living, and it won't be as rewarding.
Here's where I think I stand with AI. I don't believe in this purist approach where it has to be completely no AI or these other approaches where people think they can prompt entire film and then generate entire performance. And here's how I see it. I think AI is going to enter as a practical solution to a lot of, let's say, VFX parts. Sure. And I think it's going to make VFX much easier. For example, and it could solve a lot of practical issues. Let's say, for example, we're shooting this setup right now. I don't have all the lights. Let's say I'm missing that light, but I want to sort of put a better light on me. And we already have the solutions in Premiere.
Yes.
You edit as well. I can do a mask. I can light myself up, especially if I'm recording in a RAW format. Essentially, we're capturing a lot of light information, exposure steps that I can relight things in post-production. So I think VFX is going to sneak it into that entire VFX and make a lot of practical solutions, which might eliminate certain jobs. Now, instead of having a crew of 10, I can do this with crew of 2, for example.
Isn't that interesting? You have a lot of low-budget indie filmmakers already making that stuff, and this is helpful for them.
Yeah, but look, let's talk about it this way. some people look at AI as cheating, but we as filmmakers been cheating since beginning of filmmaking. Yes. For example, green screening. I can green something, throw a green screen and do composite, and then I'll create some kind of fake shot. So if I'm going to use a little bit of AI, for example, I'm going to film you sitting in your room, but through the window I want to see that's New York City or like a busy street on New York City, and you have a big window, you're looking out. Well, right now I might have to use traditional way of, do a green screen or maybe a rotoscope you out, and then hire somebody that's going to create the New York City. But with AI, maybe I can now film you, and then just use AI to create a scene, which I was going to use certain VFX tools anyways, and just going to speed up my process. So I think in that terms, I see as a fair use. But here's where I draw the line: human performance, acting. I do not believe that it would ever be replaced, because there are things that we discussed, the choices that you make, idiosyncrasies that cannot be, I don't think that can be generated with AI. AI, what it is basically mathematical computation of the means. If I can prompt, say, I can take a picture of you and write a prompt and say, Mickey is really scared to say hello to a new girl because he's very shy. And there's this new girl that's standing in front of him. Give me a 5-second scene and how he's going to say hi. And all it's going to do is just going to take some kind of average and it's going to perform something that's formulaic. But something that we discussed that an actor might choose to maybe make a mistake. Maybe he doesn't remember the name of the girl and he's sitting there and everyone thinks that he's scared to say her name, but he just forgot it. But that in itself becomes a performance, right? Mm-hmm.
I don't know how we do current movie making with AI, in the sense of having performers be replaced by AI. I'm not as interested in a single person sitting down at a computer and generating an entire story where they have all of the control. I don't think that control makes for good stories. I think challenges make for good story. Mm-hmm. In the same way that you guys came in here, you set up that light that way because you saw the certain constraints in here. Having control and perfection, it's endless.
Yeah.
How do you decide?
You're right, and I think with once again with AI, what you need when you make a film, let's say if we're going to film a scene, you're right, you come into a room, you decide that you can't light it up the way you thought it, whether you sketched it out. So now you do your constraints. The actors are running late, so we need to...
Hey, come on.
or the other actor didn't bring the right shirt.
Oh, man, it's always the actors.
Well, the DP didn't bring the right lens.
Sure.
Okay.
Or it broke in the bag.
And we only have, instead of 2 cameras, we only have 1, or whatever. We don't have a wide-angle lens, we only have tight-angle lens. This mess, this sloppy mess of things happening and then how is it going to affect how we bring the text in dialogue and behavior to life? Cannot be prompt. This is the sloppy human behavior that brings everything to life, which people don't see. They only see the output. And they think, well, this can be generated with AI, but it's not. If you make films just with these prompts, all you're going to get is, as I say, mathematical approximation what the scene ought to look.
It is usually the first pass for an actor. Mm-hmm. First pass for an actor is like, generally, you paint with a pretty general color. Mm-hmm. Oh, this is a sad scene. Mm-hmm. The amount of times I've worked with an actor and it's like, this is a sad scene, they're gonna play it in a sad fashion. And then I'll ask them to tell me a sad story. Something bad that happened to them. And it's like, oh man, this one time, I was in the back of my car and, I didn't like my grandfather very much. Like now he's dead and I feel some ways about it. But I called him a motherfucker. And he turned around and he slapped the fucking shit out of me. He slapped me so hard. My left eye still doesn't work. That, on the page, that's a sad story. But the way that I just told that to you, it's not. Mm-hmm. Because I've had years and years and years to think about that and to process that. And how I share that to you is really important. Now, if you tell a computer to tell that story, you don't get that. Mm-hmm. And I think the same thing is true for if you have a wardrobe specialist. Mm-hmm. And you say, yeah, it's cold outside, so probably it's like a double layer parka. He goes, wait a second though, like I remember when I was poor in New York City, I didn't have a double layer parka. Just because we have the ability to have it doesn't mean it's the right choice. And in an AI computer-generated world, you have all the choices you want. And there's nobody there in the room with you going, well, hold on a second. I have this personal experience that might make this a more unique moment.
I'm going to actually segue to this. And here's one major problem that I have with AI. When you create something using prompts, then another person, and then you make it, let's say, a short film, and then you put it out in the world, and you claim it that this is something you produce. Then another person might say, well, wait a minute, I wrote the same prompts, right? So now he can take your film and say, well, I'm just going to distribute it myself. And next thing you know, 100 people distributing the same film because they can claim, hey, we all wrote the same prompts, right? So this becomes an issue where now this content has no value.
And I think what we're missing here is the element that is scarce is personal, unique human experience. The beauty of collaboration is all of those unique, and I mean very unique. Nobody has ever looked in my grandfather's left eye when he was smacking the shit out of me, and he turned around and I watched, I watched out the window wishing I was another person. And then you put me in the same room with somebody who had a lovely grandfather. Why are we so obsessed with producing so much rather than produce one, two things
That are very unique. Do you think creativity will survive as AI will increasingly enter our world?
Yes, and I think it'll be more valuable than ever.
I believe that with AI, anything that's repetitive can be replaced. So any redundant work should potentially be done with AI. But as we've discussed, and potentially with other guests, that creativity is so unpredictable and so sloppy that it potentially will survive because AI will continually need more and more data. So stupid ideas that we come up with are needed for their mathematical analysis of variance. As an artist, you see yourself mainly as an actor, but being an artist, you tend to play with other media as well, don't you?
Yeah. Not professionally as much, but yeah, I like to doodle. I like to write stories. I do poetry. I storytell. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. But the follow-up question would be, do you think it's important to doodle these other things to build your artistic perspective that can later translate into your performance as an actor?
Yes. You almost never solve a problem by staring directly at the problem.
Yes.
Why do we solve so many problems when we're riding an exercise bike or when we're sitting in the car and we're driving and we go, oh my God, I have an idea. And it's part of this like left brain, right brain thing where...
Or the unconscious.
Or the unconscious. And how do we unlock that? Yeah. And I think it is through play, and I think it is through idle time.
And creativity is a quite complex process that cannot be constrained to whatever the media that you have chosen. So for example, if I'm making a film, it cannot just be only about looking at the script and playing with the cameras. For example, it would help to, at some point, to paint, to act also myself, right? And you have a bigger picture how to present this story, right? Because it's essentially it's communication. It's a creative approach to communicate with other human beings.
And the beauty of communication is that it is never perfect. You can take Shakespearean characters. Shakespeare had one of the greatest capacities for language ever, and his characters do as well, and they still ended up killing themselves.
Yes.
And so you can have the greatest capacity in the world to communicate an idea to another person, but the beauty of the human is that this and this produce something that is incommunicable. It's why people regret not saying the right thing to their loved one before they pass away, or like the way that they treated somebody is because the mixture of emotion and urgency and circumstances, it produces mistakes.
Yes.
And that is what makes us human, and I think that's what makes art beautiful, is that it's human.